What if I told you there is a house in America where nobody who entered after sunset was ever seen again? No bodies, no screams, no evidence. Only abandoned cars, broken cameras, and one terrifying mystery that has haunted investigators for more than 20 decades. Police called it impossible. Paranormal experts called it cursed. The few witnesses who escaped alive refused to speak about what they saw inside. But years later, one forgotten audio recording was finally discovered, and what it revealed still terrifies everyone who hears it. This is one of the most disturbing American horror stories ever told. If you're alone, you may want to keep the lights on. In the autumn of 2004, hidden deep within the forests of northern Vermont, stood an abandoned Victorian mansion known locally as Black Hollow House. The mansion had once belonged to a wealthy physician named Edward Langston, who built the estate in 1891 after returning from years of traveling through Europe. Residents believed Langston collected strange artifacts from abandoned churches, forgotten cemeteries, and ruined castles. After moving into Black Hollow House with his wife and daughter, neighbors claimed they heard disturbing sounds coming from inside almost every night. Children crying, heavy footsteps, doors slamming, voices speaking in languages nobody recognized. Then, without warning, the Langston family vanished. Breakfast remained on the dining table. Their clothes stayed inside closets. Their horses were still locked inside the stable. But every member of the family disappeared without leaving behind a single trace. Authorities searched every inch of the property. Nothing. No blood. No signs of violence. No footprints. The official report simply listed the case as an unexplained disappearance. Years passed. Nature slowly swallowed the estate. Trees surrounded the mansion. Windows shattered. The roof began collapsing. Yet locals insisted strange lights continued appearing inside after midnight. Some claimed they saw figures standing in the upstairs windows. Others heard children laughing from empty rooms. Most ignored the stories until people actually began disappearing. The first confirmed case happened in 1986. 3 college students from Burlington decided to spend Halloween night exploring Black Hollow House. They parked beside the old gravel road. A nearby gas station owner watched them carrying flashlights toward the mansion. The next morning, their car remained exactly where they left it. The keys still rested inside the ignition. Their backpacks were untouched, but the students were gone. Search teams spent 5 days looking through nearby forests. Police dogs followed their scent directly to the mansion's entrance. Then, the trail simply ended. It was as though the 3 students had stopped existing the moment they stepped through the front door. No bodies were ever recovered. Investigators blamed the wilderness. Perhaps they became lost. Maybe wild animals attacked them. But those explanations never satisfied the families because none explained why their scent disappeared inside the house. Over the next 18 years, similar disappearances continued. Urban explorers, photographers, ghost hunters, even experienced hikers. Some entered the mansion alone. Others entered in groups. None returned. Eventually, local police surrounded the property with warning signs. Trespassers enter at their own risk, yet curiosity always proved stronger than fear. Television documentaries called Black Hollow House one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries. Internet forums filled with theories, secret tunnels, government experiments, underground caves, serial killers. Every explanation sounded possible, except none matched the evidence. In October 2004, an investigative journalist named Daniel Harper decided he would finally uncover the truth. Daniel was 36 years old, known for exposing dangerous cults and solving forgotten cold cases. He laughed whenever people mentioned ghosts. There are no haunted houses, he often told viewers, only unanswered questions. His documentary crew consisted of 4 people: Rachel, the camerawoman; Marcus, the audio technician; Emily, the producer; and retired detective Frank Donnelly, hired to ensure everyone's safety. They arrived shortly before sunset. The mansion stood exactly as photographs described: dark, silent, rotting beneath towering oak trees. Every window resembled an empty eye staring back into the forest. Daniel began filming immediately. "If people disappeared here," he said confidently into the camera, "there has to be a logical explanation." Frank quietly interrupted, "Let's not stay after dark." Daniel smiled. "You don't actually believe these stories?" Frank hesitated. "I investigated 2 disappearances here 15 years ago, and I've never forgotten what I heard inside." Daniel laughed. "What did you hear?" Frank looked toward the front door. "Someone calling my name." The team exchanged nervous smiles. Nobody responded. Inside, dust covered every surface. Old paintings leaned against cracked walls. Furniture remained strangely untouched despite decades of abandonment. A grandfather clock stood in the entrance hall. Its hands pointed at exactly 11:47. It had stopped there years ago, or so they assumed. Rachel filmed every room carefully. Marcus placed sensitive microphones throughout the building. Everything appeared completely ordinary until they reached the 2nd floor. Every watch suddenly stopped. Phones froze. Camera batteries instantly dropped from full charge to 0.
Marcus frowned. "That's impossible." Daniel blamed old electronics. They replaced every battery they carried. Nothing worked. Only one old analog camera continued recording. Then, a loud bang echoed downstairs. Everyone froze. Frank whispered, "Did someone just close the front door?" They rushed toward the staircase. The entrance remained exactly where they left it, except the front door was now locked from the inside. Nobody remembered locking it. Frank grabbed the handle. It wouldn't move. Daniel pushed harder. Nothing. Emily laughed nervously. "Probably warped wood." Before anyone answered, they heard footsteps above them. Slow, heavy, walking across the 3rd floor. But the 3rd floor had partially collapsed decades earlier. According to architectural records, nobody could possibly be walking there. The footsteps continued. 1, 2, 3, then stopped directly above Daniel. Silence. Rachel slowly pointed her camera upward. A dark stain began spreading across the ceiling. At first, it resembled leaking rainwater. Then, drop. A single thick black liquid landed on the wooden floor. Marcus reached toward it. Frank instantly grabbed his wrist. "Don't touch it." The liquid slowly disappeared into the floorboards as though the wood itself had swallowed it. Without warning, every microphone activated at once. Static filled the building. Then a whisper emerged, soft, barely audible. "Don't let it know you're here." Everyone looked at Marcus. "I didn't record that." The whisper repeated, closer this time. "It's watching." Rachel swung the camera toward the hallway. Nothing. Only darkness stretching endlessly where moments earlier there had been a normal corridor. Daniel frowned. That hallway wasn't this long before. No one answered, because they all realized he was right. The hallway had somehow doubled in length, and at the very end, a small child was standing completely motionless, wearing an old white dress, her face hidden beneath long black hair. She slowly raised one hand and pointed directly at Daniel. Then the lights inside the camera flickered. The recording cut to black. Daniel's first instinct was to run toward the child. Frank grabbed his shoulder so hard it nearly knocked him backward. "Don't move," the retired detective whispered, his voice trembling in a way none of them had heard before. "If that's what I think it is, don't acknowledge it." The little girl remained perfectly still. She did not blink, she did not breathe. She simply stood there with one pale finger pointing directly at Daniel. Rachel adjusted the focus on the analog camera. For a brief second, the hallway looked completely normal. No child, no strange darkness, only peeling wallpaper and broken windows. Then she lowered the camera. The girl was standing there again. Rachel's face turned white. I can only see her without the camera." Nobody spoke. A freezing gust of air swept through the hallway. The temperature dropped so quickly that everyone could see their own breath. Marcus glanced at the digital thermometer hanging from his backpack. 43 degrees, then 38 degrees, then 31 degrees. Within seconds, the air inside the house felt colder than the October night outside. Suddenly, the child smiled. Not a friendly smile, a smile so unnaturally wide that it stretched almost from one ear to the other. Then, she slowly stepped backward into the darkness. One step, another, until the darkness itself swallowed her. The hallway returned to its normal size. Silence. Daniel forced a laugh. Someone is playing tricks. Even as he said the words, they sounded empty. Frank stared directly at him. "If you're still trying to explain this logically, you're not paying attention." Daniel ignored him. "We keep filming." Emily wasn't so sure anymore. "We've seen enough." "No." Daniel shook his head. "If we leave now, nobody will believe us." They continued deeper into Black Hollow House. The third-floor staircase looked unstable, but still climbable. Frank refused. "I'm staying here." Daniel insisted. "It'll only take 5 minutes." Against his better judgment, Frank followed. Each step groaned beneath their weight. Dust floated through beams of fading sunlight entering broken windows. When they reached the top, everyone froze. According to county records, most of this floor had collapsed nearly 20 years earlier. Yet, everything looked untouched. Fresh wallpaper, clean wooden floors, burning candles, a warm fireplace. Even the smell had changed. Instead of mold and decay, the air smelled of fresh bread and lavender. Emily whispered, "This can't be real." The rooms no longer looked abandoned.
They looked lived in. Family photographs decorated the walls. A piano softly played somewhere nearby. Daniel slowly approached one photograph. It showed Edward Langston standing beside his wife and young daughter. All three smiled warmly at the camera. Then, Daniel noticed something impossible. There were 5 people in the photograph, not 3. Standing behind the family were Daniel, Rachel, Marcus, Emily, and Frank, exactly as they appeared today, wearing the same clothes, the same frightened expressions. Rachel gasped, "No!" Daniel stepped closer. The date beneath the photograph read October 14th, 1893, over 100 years before any of them had been born. Marcus stumbled backward. "This is impossible." Then, the people inside the photograph moved. Not much, just enough. Daniel watched his own image slowly turn its head and look directly out of the picture. Emily screamed. The frame shattered against the wall before anyone touched it. Glass exploded across the floor. The piano music stopped instantly. Silence. Then a woman's voice echoed through the mansion. "You're late for dinner." Soft, kind, almost comforting. Another voice answered, a little girl giggling. Daniel looked toward the dining room. Lights glowed beneath the doorway. Frank whispered, "Don't go in." But curiosity won again. Daniel slowly pushed open the door. Inside sat a beautifully prepared dinner table, 5 empty plates, 5 burning candles, 5 chairs. One extra chair stood at the head of the table, as if someone invisible was already sitting there. Fresh food steamed from silver dishes, roasted chicken, bread, soup. Everything smelled delicious. Rachel stared in disbelief. How is this possible? Marcus reached toward a loaf of bread. Before his fingers touched it, Frank shouted, "No!" Marcus jumped. Frank's face looked terrified. "If you eat anything inside this house..." He never finished because every candle suddenly went out. Darkness consumed the room. For exactly 3 seconds, nobody could see anything. Then, the candles reignited by themselves. Marcus was gone. His chair lay overturned, his audio recorder still resting on the floor, still recording. "Marcus!" Daniel shouted. No answer. They searched every room, every hallway, every closet. Nothing. It was as though Marcus had vanished into thin air. Rachel began crying. "We have to leave!" Finally, Daniel agreed. The team rushed toward the staircase, except there was no staircase anymore. Only a solid brick wall. Emily slammed her fists against it. "It was right here!" Frank searched every hallway. Nothing matched the layout they remembered. Doors led into rooms that hadn't existed minutes earlier. Windows overlooked forests that seemed endless. One window revealed bright daylight. Another showed heavy snowfall. A third looked out over a cemetery. Each window displayed a completely different world. Time itself no longer made sense. Hours seemed to pass, then minutes, then seconds. Everyone's watches still showed 11:47. Always 11:47. Daniel finally realized something horrifying. We're not lost inside the house. He looked around slowly. The house is changing around us. As if hearing those words, the walls began moving, very slowly, almost silently. Hallways stretched, ceilings twisted, doors disappeared, floors shifted beneath their feet. The mansion wasn't abandoned, it was alive, and it was rearranging itself, separating them. Rachel suddenly pointed behind Daniel. His blood froze. Standing only a few feet away was Marcus, or something wearing Marcus's face. His eyes were completely black, his smile stretched impossibly wide. His voice sounded wrong, too deep, too many voices speaking together. "You shouldn't have come," Emily whispered. "Marcus?" The figure tilted its head, bones cracked loudly inside its neck. Then it answered, "I'm not Marcus anymore." At that exact moment, every door in the hallway slammed shut, one after another. Boom, 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 boom. The entire mansion shook violently. Somewhere deep inside the darkness, a child began laughing again. But this time, hundreds of children were laughing with her, and every single voice was getting closer. The laughter echoed through every hallway at once. It didn't sound like it came from children anymore. It sounded like hundreds of voices trapped inside the walls, laughing together, crying together, begging together. Rachel covered her ears. "It won't stop!" Frank pulled a small flashlight from his coat. Against all odds, it still worked. "Stay together," he whispered. "Whatever happens, don't follow any voices, even if they sound like someone you love." The figure wearing Marcus's face stood perfectly still. Then, without moving its lips, it spoke again. "You've already stayed too long." The lights flickered, the hallway twisted, and the figure simply disappeared. No footsteps, no shadow, nothing. Daniel picked up Marcus's audio recorder. The small red recording light was still blinking. He pressed play. At first, there was only static, then Marcus's voice. "If anyone finds this, don't come inside." Heavy breathing followed. "I thought I got separated from the others, but I don't think that's what happened." A long silence. Then Marcus whispered, "The house isn't haunted." Another pause. Then it feeds. The recording crackled violently. "It learns your memories, copies your voice, then makes the others follow it." Daniel's hands began shaking. Marcus continued, "I've been walking for 6 hours." Static. "Or maybe 6 days." Static. "I keep finding doors that lead back to the same room." Another silence. Then his voice dropped almost to a whisper. "I found the people who disappeared." Rachel looked at Daniel. "What does he mean?" Daniel kept listening. "They're still here. They're alive, but they aren't people anymore." A loud crash interrupted the recording. Marcus screamed. Something roared in the background, a deep, unnatural sound unlike any animal. Then came the final sentence. "If you hear me calling your name, run." The recording ended. Silence filled the hallway. No one spoke. Then, "Daniel?" A familiar voice echoed from somewhere downstairs. It was Marcus, exactly Marcus, not the recording, not an echo, his real voice. "Daniel, help me!" Rachel instinctively took a step forward. Frank blocked her path. "No." "But that's Marcus." "No," Frank said firmly. "That's what the house wants you to believe." Again, "Rachel." This time, the voice sounded frightened. "I'm trapped." Rachel burst into tears. "Marcus!" She ran. Frank reached for her but missed by inches. She disappeared around the corner. "Rachel!" Daniel and Frank chased after her. They turned the corner only seconds later. The hallway was empty. Rachel was gone. Only her analog camera remained on the floor, still recording. Daniel picked it up. The tape was still running. He rewound it a few seconds. The footage showed Rachel running ahead. Then she suddenly stopped. Someone was standing in front of her. A little girl wearing a white dress. The child slowly reached out her hand. Rachel took it, and both of them simply faded into darkness. Not walked away, not vanished in smoke. They slowly dissolved, as though reality itself erased them. Daniel dropped the camera. His breathing became uneven. For the first time since entering Black Hollow House, he admitted the truth. "There is no logical explanation." Frank nodded sadly. "I realized that 20 years ago." The old detective finally revealed why he had never returned. Back in 1984, his younger brother had entered Black Hollow House with 3 friends. Only Frank came out. Everyone believed he had escaped, but Frank confessed something he had never told anyone. "I didn't escape." Daniel stared. "What?" "The house let me leave." Frank looked towards the darkness. It wanted someone outside to tell the story. Before Daniel could respond, every wall around them began vibrating. The entire mansion groaned like a living creature waking from sleep. Portraits fell. Glass shattered. The floor cracked beneath their feet. Then, a massive wooden door slowly opened by itself. Neither of them had seen that door before. Inside waited a circular room, unlike anything else in the mansion. The walls were covered with thousands of names, scratched into the wood, some old, some fresh, hundreds, perhaps thousands. Every missing person, every victim, every soul the house had claimed. Daniel searched the wall. His heart stopped. Near the bottom, freshly carved, still dripping with dust, Daniel Harper, Rachel Morgan, Marcus Hill, Emily Carter, Frank Donnelly. Their names had already been added before they had died or disappeared. Emily suddenly screamed from another hallway. They rushed toward her voice. She stood frozen before an old mirror, only the mirror reflected someone else. Emily herself wasn't visible. Instead, a much older woman stared back. Her hair was gray, her face wrinkled. She looked terrified. The woman inside the mirror reached out, placed her hand against the glass, then mouthed 4 silent words. "Don't let it win." The mirror shattered. Thousands of razor-sharp pieces exploded across the room. When the dust settled, Emily had vanished. Daniel collapsed to his knees. Everyone was gone, everyone except Frank. The old detective helped him stand. "We still have one chance." "What chance?" "The front door appears once." "When?" "When the house believes it has already won." Almost immediately, a cold wind rushed through the hallway. Somewhere ahead, moonlight spilled across the floor. The front entrance. They ran. Hallways twisted behind them. Doors slammed. The laughter returned. Footsteps thundered from every direction. Shadows stretched along the walls. Something enormous crawled across the ceiling, just beyond the flashlight's reach. Neither man dared look directly at it. The front door stood open, only 50 feet away. 40, 30, 10. Frank suddenly stopped. Daniel turned. "What are you doing?" The old detective smiled for the first time. "It only lets one leave." Before Daniel could react, Frank shoved him toward the doorway. Daniel stumbled outside. The moment he crossed the threshold, the front door slammed shut with unbelievable force. "Frank!" Daniel threw himself against the door. It wouldn't move. From inside, he heard Frank laughing, not from madness, from relief. Then, silence. Absolute silence. Police arrived 3 hours after receiving Daniel's emergency call. They searched the mansion from top to bottom. Every room, every hallway, every hidden space. There was no sign of Frank, no Rachel, no Marcus, no Emily, not even the mysterious circular room. It didn't exist. According to the official floor plans, there was never a 3rd floor. There was never a hidden chamber. Authorities blamed trauma, hallucinations, stress. Daniel never argued, because he had one piece of evidence: Marcus's audio recorder. Except when investigators played it, the tape contained nothing, only static. Every spoken word had disappeared. Years passed. Black Hollow House was finally demolished. Bulldozers reduced the mansion to splinters and dust. Workers believed the nightmare had ended, until the construction supervisor made one final discovery. Beneath the foundation, there was no basement, no concrete support, no underground structure, only a massive, perfectly circular pit descending into complete darkness. Engineers lowered powerful lights. They never reached the bottom. One worker claimed he heard children laughing from below. Another said someone whispered his name. The pit was immediately sealed with thousands of tons of concrete. Officially, the case was closed, but every October, people driving through that forgotten stretch of Vermont report seeing something impossible. A Victorian mansion standing exactly where it once stood. its windows glowing warmly, smoke rising from the chimney, and in the upstairs window, a little girl in a white dress, waiting, pointing toward the front door, as if inviting one more visitor inside. No one knows whether Black Hollow House truly existed as witnesses described. No one can explain the disappearances, but one lesson has survived every version of the story. Curiosity can uncover the truth, but sometimes the truth is not meant to be found. Some doors are locked for a reason, and sometimes the most terrifying places aren't the ones that hide monsters. They're the ones that quietly invite you in.